back to another special Young Man in the Three, presented as always by 342 Productions and our friends at Wondery Media. The boys are back. Dunker Spot, Nekias Duncan, Steve Jones, Trey Murphy in his fresh white fit down in downtown Miami, giving me that look. I don't know why he's giving me that look. What's up, fellas?
That's your one joke I'll allow for the day, and it's your one joke.
You just keep wearing. I don't know what to say. You showed up to a Zoom call in that jacket like we're gonna say something. There's no.
Anyway, playoff basketball, everybody. So what are we talking about here today on the docket?
Trey's been in a mood. He's been in a mood all weekend. So let's get to the. We don't need to touch on that. We'll get to the games. I want to start with you. I want to start about the games last night. I think let's hit Game 7 first. Your initial thoughts on Buddy and everything else.
To borrow from my friend here, Steve Jones Jr., Game 7s can be weird. You never know who's going to explode in a Game 7. It just happened to be Buddy Hield with, 22 points in the first half. I think his 6 first-half threes in that Game 7 was a Game 7 record. So shout out to Buddy Hield on that front. But for me, I was impressed with the defense that Golden State played for most of that game. And I was also a little disappointed with what Houston left on the table, it felt like, offensively. And I think as the series went on, they needed a lot of Fred VanVleet. He was up for the challenge, but it would have been nice if someone else could join him on the dance. It wasn't a great Jalen Green series for most of that series. Amen Thompson really struggled as a driver early in the series, really kind of perked up as the series went on, but ultimately he wasn't consistent enough either. You're just kind of waiting on that second guy in the perimeter room to kind of step up to help Fred in that front. And I came away super impressed with Draymond Green. We know what kind of defender he is, but Alperen Sengun just didn't have much for him in that Game 7. And I think as well as Houston defended for the most part in that game and throughout that series, you just needed some half-court production offensively, and they just didn't get enough of it in Game 7.
Trey, what'd you see?
That was basically the same thing. It just didn't score enough. If you don't, with Golden State, you got to score the ball, even though they play great defense. And they held Golden State to, what was the final score, 103 or was it 111?
103.
Yeah, 103. 103 in a playoff game, that's not a lot, but you got to find a way to get to 100 at least to give yourself a chance to win the game.
Steve, only 4 Golden State bench points. Great Kevon Looney minutes, which I think some people might have predicted after Game 6, but they obviously need more from the bench. They got a 20-hour turnaround? There's not a lot of time to kind of figure out how to get ready for Minnesota. What do you want to see based off this moving forward to the next couple of days?
Well, I think the good thing for Golden State, every series is different, So we kind of, you build momentum, but each series has a different feel. So sometimes it's going to be this guy's series, the next is going to be someone else's. So the positive for Golden State is you're facing a different opponent, and so you get a little bit of a reset. You get a chance for these guys to kind of reestablish. This Rockets-Warriors series kind of morphed into, we have to win, and if you aren't doing this, you're not playing. They got this zone we got to deal with. We got to score. We got to be able to defend on the other end. And so guys' minutes dwindled. New series, fresh start. And so those guys have to stay ready. We saw Moses Moody, Quentin Post, Kevon Looney have different impactful moments during the series. Those guys got to know, okay, it's a new series, new job, new task. So how do they come out in Game 1 with the energy and the focus? Because Golden State has a unique style of play. And the positive for them is we don't have to deal with that zone anymore. We get to kind of get back to being ourselves. I think that's the story of the playoffs. One round, you're in a box. The next, you're back to being you, and you look better.
Trey, can we talk about Amen Thompson for a second? And even in a loss, just what there is to say about, him at this stage of his career, where he is?
No, it's pretty cool. He's a supreme athlete. And I think people started to really realize how good of a player he can be in that Knicks game in the Garden. I want to say it was around December, January or so. And from then on, he's, hit the ground running and he's found his stride. And, it's tough because the NBA is such a shooting league. You have to be able to shoot in order to, be effective offensively. And he's found a way to really not shoot the ball from outside and still, affect the game offensively for his team. And, just a testament to how athletic he is and how smart he is as a basketball player.
Nekias, what do you think? What do you think with this? I feel like we don't even get to do much of a postmortem because we are on to the next round so fast. What do you think looking forward? What are you looking for in the Minnesota series?
Ooh, I am intrigued by what these matchups are going to be like for Golden State, like how much cross matchup we may see from them. Jaden McDaniels versus Stephen Curry is going to be fun, which, to quickly circle back, I should have started with, outside of Buddy Hield being great. Steph with 22, 10, and 7 in that game 7. And the shots that he made were frankly absurd. I would be very upset if I had to defend that man. Thank goodness I am just chilling in my little comfy chair here and talking into a microphone. But no, I'm very excited to see what these defenses are going to look like. There's obviously going to be like the Draymond versus Rudy thing, but I do think there's some interesting ways that they could be moved around matchup wise. Like we saw Alperen Şengün on Moses Moody or Brandon Podziemski. Do we see Rudy Gobert do the same thing? The cat and mouse game with Draymond Green defensively against Anthony Edwards, as he had to deal with some of the layered help that the Lakers showed. So that's going to be a fun battle. I'm just really excited about the defense on both sides for this one.
Steve, I want to move on to the Pacers. I want to get your sort of initial thoughts on what you saw yesterday. This has kind of been bubbling for a while. Nekias has mentioned this. He mentioned this last week, I think. Pacers are now 39-15 in the calendar year of 2025. They've been rolling since the new year. What did you see in last night, and what do you see sort of for the series moving forward?
I saw the Indiana Pacers continue to do what they do offensively. Tyrese Halliburton, I thought, had the right mindset. He was really comfortable in this series, and he had that command on when to play make and when to score, and it just opened everything up. Cleveland tried to go, hey, we're going to put Jared Allen on Pascal Siakam, and Tyrese is like, cool, we're going to attack that right away. And then Jared Allen, you're going to be in action all day. I think this was the third game of the playoffs where Tyrese had 10 or more assists with only one turnover. So considering his usage, that's pretty key. But I think the toughest part with Indiana is they're so good at continuing to keep pressure on you, and they play with such a pace that they know the possessions they'll have. So you look at Nembhard and Nesmith and the kind of shots they make, you don't think about the pull-up threes, the contested threes they hit, because it's in the flow of the game. Cleveland's an offensive-minded team. Those are body blows. And now in that fourth corner, those guys are comfortable. And I thought Nembhard made some massive shots. I think he's made 3 or more threes in 4 of the Pacers' 6 playoff games. Do y'all know how many times he did that in the regular season?
No, but like I know he shot 29% from 3 in the regular season, because we had him on the show right before the season ended, and he was talking about his shooting being down. Well, how many times did he do it?
0 times. They had a bunch with 2, but 0 times. And so he's able to kind of have a different flow, and they're able to put you in a position where, okay, we're trying to deal with the Jared Allen. Are we in a drop? Are we at the level? Are we switching? Now they keep dinging you. That shot goes in. Dang, that was a good defensive rep for us because we switched. Pascal Siakam in the post. We didn't get it to him. Oh, no. And they kind of keep dinging you. So I think the thing for Cleveland is they're going to have to find a way to feel comfortable defensively, because this Indiana Pacers team, when they're flowing and they're able to poke at your defense and they play with the pace and they go side to side, they're really hard to deal with.
Trey, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, from the difference from the Rockets series is that, scoring, putting the ball in the basket is how you win games. And Indiana Pacers do that better than almost anybody in the playoffs right now. So I think Cleveland probably had a little bit of a shock factor because they played against a Miami Heat team that literally could not score against their defense. And then, you play against the Pacers and they're coming out, playing fast, spacing the floor, moving the ball around. And it's hard to keep up with that because, Cleveland scored enough to win the game. They just didn't defend well enough to, beat the Pacers.
Steve, I was gonna ask, how do you think that how do you think they defended the switches? You were talking about this last night. What was your feeling on the switches overall?
I like the idea. I think the fact that they were so decisive with it was good, but I think it opens things up. Like, one, Jared Allen, he's going to have to contain. What is the help behind it? So if you're showing help, Indiana is going to move the ball quick. Does that open up a 3? Does that open up another drive? Miles Turner is really good at setting flare screens. So does Jared Allen have to navigate that? And so I like that they settled on it, but it kind of put them in tough spots because now Miles Turner's going to the post. Pascal's going to the post. We're trying to navigate and figure things out. And then in the fourth quarter, in those tight moments, Indiana had that comfort, that automatic, okay, we're going to go at this matchup. We're going to put you in action. Hey, Donovan Mitchell, you come screen. Your man comes screen. You switch first. Now Jared Allen comes. How do y'all want to navigate that? How do you want to handle that? So I think that's where I'm like, I like the idea from Cleveland, but they're going to have to do a better job of containing the Pacers and being more physical and pressuring the ball a little bit better. Because you don't want to be in a scenario where Jared Allen doesn't have a coverage and now Indiana can continue to pick you apart.
Nekias, what'd you see?
For me, like it early on, it kind of gave me like maybe not this year's 2K, but last year's 2K. You kind of load into a game, the default is just switching, and you just kind of know, oh, cool, I can just get the matchup that I want in this case. So to Steve's point, like I'm glad it's cool that they settled in on something. There was a level of conviction that they had, but Indiana was able to poke at it. I think Pascal Siakam set a really nice tone early. And as Steve alluded to earlier, Tyrese Halliburton was aggressive against the switches too. And then you get to the second half, and it felt like, cool, let's just make sure Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are high up on the floor. And so then whatever we want to run, you just don't have size in the paint anymore. We can win with these drives. You're going to get some help from somewhere. And again, as Steve alluded to, now you get into some of these late clock threes from Andrew Nembhard or Aaron Nesmith. It's like, well, why are we collapsing that hard in the paint? Your two all defense level caliber guys are 25 feet from the basket now because y'all switched early in the clock. And so I think if Cleveland is going to continue to lean on the switching, honestly, I'm less worried about the actual switches and more like there are some opportunities to scram switch in some situations as Indiana was setting up shop and they just didn't get to it. I don't know if that was just let's see how this goes in game one or if they're worried about Indiana flowing into things quickly. I would like to rewatch and get a better feel on that, but it felt like they left some stuff on the table on that front. Quickly on the numbers front, 1.2 points per possession on any pick and roll that Cleveland switched. It was 1.9 when Jared Allen switched. Those numbers are incredibly high. Indiana will take that. That can't be sustainable for Cleveland.
Do you have a specific, outside of the scram switching, do you have a specific adjustment you want to see for game two?
That's probably the more pressing one. Like I think Cleveland was fine, particularly in the second half. They got going a little bit more offensively. It felt like Donovan Mitchell set a tone on that front. Like they sprinkled in their usual inverted stuff for Evan Mobley. Like obviously the absence of Darius Garland loomed pretty heavily right now. Like it was a lot of Ty Jerome. They put a little bit of a burden on him as we got into the second half. So I think for me, it's shot selection stuff, but mostly they got to get a feel on these switches and probably throw in some more scrams so they can stay out of mismatches.
It feels like it's right.
I was going to say one thing I might add is that Cleveland might have saw exactly what Milwaukee was doing. Exactly what the Pacers were doing to Milwaukee with the scram switch, and they're just like, let's try not to get into that because that was one thing I noticed that the Pacers were just attacking the hell out of those scram switches. Like wherever Dame was going to close out to, they're just like, all right, we're going to swing it right to that person or cut them back door. So it's like, you just got to be careful with that because of how well they move the ball and how well like everybody on the team can just attack the basket and make right plays after that.
Fair.
Steve, do you have an adjustment?
You know, I was thinking, because Trey was talking earlier, I'm wondering, is Cleveland's best adjustment just doing even better offensively? I mean, because at the end of the day, they had 70 points in the paint against the Indiana Pacers. They had 70 points in the paint. They only had 8 turnovers. If we had told Kenny Atkinson that was going to be the vibe, we'd be like, all right, we got game one in the paint. They didn't make enough threes. So if they can kind of mix the drives, keep the pressure on Indiana, I thought this was probably one of the first times in a while where I felt like Cleveland's tempo was a little off. Like, hey, it's 16 on the clock. What have y'all really done to Indiana? You credit the Pacers for their pressure, but I think if the Cavs can kind of just settle in a little bit more offensively, make the Pacers take the ball at the net, set up their defense a little bit better, they'll be in for a better effort. But yeah, the culture shock is over. This is a series. It's going to be back and forth.
Yeah, I did see that Indy was plus 30 on threes, and they won by 9. So we'll see. You know, we'll see, and we'll see. Obviously, we'll see if Darius is back, but I feel like that'll make a big difference. I want to move on to the 2 tonight. I want to get your initial thoughts, Trey. You first. Knicks Boston. We haven't taped one of these things since Jalen took over the city of Detroit. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this series overall, just on a macro level. What you're seeing, what you're looking for. Honestly, like what we're from all you guys. What are the Knicks going to do to change the narrative that has been built in this, in these 4 games this season? It's 4-0 Celtics in the season series. Besides the last game at MSG, the games haven't been close. And so the talent is there, but Trey, I want to start with you. What do we need to see from them to basically sort of like flip this thing around a little bit?
I feel like this is a very important series for the Knicks because this is what you got McHale for, was to guard these big wings along with OG. And this is your test here on to see if this is what you invested your future, invested your championship window for is, this series against Boston. So I think it's gonna be huge for, OG and McHale to really performed this series. Obviously, Jalen doing his thing. Obviously, Cat doing his thing as well. But I think it's gonna be a really fun series. Definitely scoring the ball wise, offensively, and we'll see a lot of high scoring games. A little different from the Detroit series.
Nekias, I'm curious if there's anything you think the Knicks can do to, Josh on Porzingis. Is there anything they can do to kind of like throw at them tonight in particular that you would sort of like to see, that you feel like can get Boston get them off the 3-point line, which Orlando did pretty well, but then also just like get them off this rhythm that they have against the Knicks, which Trey and I watched opening night in New Orleans. It feels like it was 10 years ago, but like it's 3-point practice for whatever reason against this team, which shouldn't work with the guys the Knicks have defensively. And so what do you think they can do to just kind of like get this off them a little bit with this particular team?
I think the quote unquote easier answer is that the Knicks can lean into switching in a way that they just really haven't. Like, they're one of the lower switch rate teams in the NBA. And so if you want to try to flatten them out, there is just the Orlando template. Let's switch, let's stay at home and trust that we can defend well enough on Boston drives. I don't think, with respect to OG and Mikal, they are incredible, but you talk about the overall team shell. Like, I don't think the Knicks have the personnel to switch as heavily as Orlando does and did in that Boston series. But I think that'd be your easiest way. If you're going to take threes, they are going to be self-created. Is kind of the mindset heading into that. And from there, how well do you hold up on drives? And if you do get into some of the Jason Tatum side steps or Jaylen Brown pull-ups or Derek White pull-ups, how many of those are you willing to live with? But that's the easiest way to go about it. I don't know how effective that would be, though.
Steve?
They got to keep the ball in front. They've got to be able to contain dribble penetration. They're just going to, like Nekias mentioned, the switching. That's a key part. Jalen Brunson's going to be in action. That's probably going to be a show and recover. They may end up giving some switches at times, but I don't know if they're going to do that every single time. Cat, they're going to mix in some switches with Cat with these guys, and then he's got to hold up, but I don't know if they're going to do that every single time. So they have kind of those scheme issues. They can't have that plus Boston drives by everyone and gets to drive and kick on top of it. If you're going to be in rotation, it's going to have to be because of you put these two in action, not because our transition defense isn't good, our half court, we're not recovering, we're getting beat on closeouts. That's been the battle for the Knicks. I think they have the personnel, as Trey said. The problem is Boston's able to poke at it to where, okay, cool, y'all aren't really in the action. Y'all have to do weak side help defense. You have to close back out. Now we're playing our game. So I think it's everything they can do to kind of keep Boston in the mud. That's going to be their best shot.
Trey, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, biggest thing with Boston, you can't give them advantages because they're going to take the advantage, hold it, and then score off that. So switching is probably the key, but then it's just like, all right, do we really want Jalen Brunson on the ball against Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, or even in the post against Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown? And then also you got to do a Cat and his pick and roll coverage as well. So definitely got something to figure out with trying to defend Boston, but also too, Boston has to guard them too. So it's like, that's part of their defense is y'all got to guard us as well.
What was your guys, just because we haven't taped since then, what was your main takeaway looking back on a great series with Detroit?
I think for me, one, Jalen Brunson was just incredible in fourth quarters that entire series. And so the big shot making was there. And I think once the Knicks got more comfortable with how they wanted to open things up for Cat, I think that's where Detroit found themselves in a little bit of trouble because they were mostly able to contain Cat. They did the cross match, showed help in a very specific way, but New York also wasn't helping Cat on that front. But once they started sprinkling in more cross screens for him, once you got into more of the pops, Steve, that I talked about on the pod, throughout the series, like the Brunson Cat two-man game was pretty good, statistically at the very least. It was just a lot of Jalen Brunson with how Tobias Harris was kind of staying attached to Cat. But once they started poking at that, it just got tough. And Detroit just didn't have enough outside of Cade, at least consistently offensively, to kind of offset that.
What do you think, Steve?
I thought Jalen Brunson and Cat just started to win matchups and made it tough on Detroit to feel comfortable with what they wanted to do. Do you want to put Harris on? You want to put Darren on Cat? Okay, that kind of changes how we can open things up. I thought the adjustment to kind of move Josh Hart around a little bit and say, okay, cool. If you have a big on Josh Hart, let's put him on the wing. So if you're going to show this automatic help, we know where the outlet is. He doesn't have to shoot it, but we at least can continue our flow and kind of keep playing that way. And so I thought they were able to navigate what the Pistons were trying to do and flip it against them. And that's what makes this series so tough, because Boston is so good defensively that I don't know where where the point is that you can kind of flip the series. And so it's going to be on Cat and Brunson to kind of win matchups.
That's what I was going to ask you, Nekias, off that too, is just like taking that success and bringing that to tonight and bringing that to this week. How do you feel that they can, because, to the point about you're getting Mikhail on the defensive front, like you got Cat offensively for this series too. And he needs to be unlocked for them to win this. And so what do you do basically with this defensive personnel to make that happen?
Ooh, I think to get Cat open offensively, make sure I'm understanding it correctly. Yeah, I think it's maintaining, make life a little easier for Cat. Then one of my early frustrations in the series against Detroit, it's like this feels very static for Cat, and all these catches are getting pushed out. So now even if Cat wins on a post-up or drive against Tobias Harris, it's taking 5 or 6 seconds and 3 or 4 dribbles to do it. And so I think Boston is going to be willing to switch quite a bit. Like we might just see Jrue Holiday take the Cat assignment outright if Jrue Holiday is going to be available for game 1. I haven't seen the status update on that front yet.
I think he's playing.
Okay, so if Drew's good to go, like we may just see Jrue on Cat. Can you get Cat some early deep catches and put some strain on Boston's defense, force some rotations? Now you can try to neutralize some of the math game, because I think Boston's going to take more threes than New York. You just don't want it to be 12, 15, 16 more attempts. And so if you get Cat going early, play the foul trouble game, again, force some double teams, you're going to need a smart passing series from Cat. Talent isn't a question. He can get with some of the overhead stuff, et cetera. Get those kickouts. I think that's how you can generate some easy stuff, because Jalen Brunson can score in a vacuum pretty much whenever he wants to. So get Cat going with some deeper catches, cross screens for him, poke at some matchups. If you do get Kristaps on Cat at all, that's when you get into your pick and pops, if those are available. I think they have ways to move him around.
Last series we'll hit today. Thunder Nuggets. Quite a game 7 on Saturday night. Steve, I want your initial thoughts on what you're thinking for this series.
Oh, it's going to be fun to see how the Thunder adjust to Jokic and how they want to guard him, when they want to stay at home, when they show help. I think the amount of defenders they can throw at Jamal Murray is going to be very interesting to me. And I want to see how Denver's able to get him going, how much size they throw at Jamal Murray. I think it's going to be interesting to see how does Denver try and handle this defensively. I think when they're at their best in the playoffs, there's a mix of drop and there's a mix of being at the level, and they're able to kind of figure it out as the series goes. OKC is a little bit different because Shea has been playing at such a high level, but they've gotten so much better at pick and roll play that they can put strain on you in that way. Have Hartenstein get a catch, they can kick, and now you're driving kick, having to rotate. So it's a little bit different than the Clippers, where we can give some of these switches. They're going to be a little bit slower. OKC's going to put a different level of pressure on them. So how does Denver adjust early there? That's probably the fun part for me. I think that for Denver, they're going to need everything Jokic and Murray can give them, and they're going to have to find a way for Aaron Gordon to impact the game as maybe like a roamer and just try and figure out how to put pressure on them, cover up defensively, and then also poke at the 2 big lineup and say, okay, if you want to help up, I can find my different gaps and impact it that way. But it should be a really fun series. I just think it's going to be a little bit of a shock for both teams, as far as OKC having to face an engine, no disrespect to Memphis. They didn't have that for the most part once Ja went down. And then Denver having to face this team that's going to continue to put pressure on you in a way the Clippers didn't.
2-2 in the regular season series with all the Thunder guys healthy. OKC was plus 49. Nekias, I want to ask you about the 2-man in particular. We talked about this obviously in the Clipper series as well. What do you think OKC, they got a lot of options. What do you think they throw at it?
To start, I would assume it's going to be Lou Dort on Jamal Murray, and we probably get Hartenstein on Jokic. I do wonder how much cross matching we get on both sides of the occasion, honestly. I think Lou Dort on Jamal Murray is how they're going to start. And once Caruso comes in, he'll get his crack at Jamal Murray. I'm sure Denver will try to poke at that. Let's go guard screen, and then flow into Murray Jokic to see what happens on that front. But I do wonder how much we see of Chet on Jokic. Chet, I think, best interior defender that OKC has, but someone that Jokic can move around a little bit. And I think related to that, if this does turn into a drop into late switch situation, how willing is OKC going to be to send doubles? That they obviously have the speed and the activity to do it, but that is giving Jokic 2 on the ball, or they might be giving Jamal Murray 2 on the ball if they want to send the late one in the clock high above the break or something like that. So I am curious to see how aggressive OKC wants to be. They are at their best when they're forcing turnovers, but they do have some size things that can be poked at. Steve mentioned a little bit earlier, Aaron Gordon's impact. We saw that in the back end of that Clippers series where they just did not have a great matchup for him. Ultimately, like Jalen Williams is probably your best bet in the starting lineup if you're not using both of those bigs to account for Aaron Gordon in some kind of way. And that is a matchup, at least physically, that Aaron Gordon can win. So I'm intrigued to see how really the 3-man actions kind of evolve in this series.
Trey, what are you looking for?
Really like a defensive philosophies on what they want to do, because I think whoever wins the 3-point game is probably going to end up winning the series, in my opinion. And the way that OKC guards, they kind of force who they want into shooting threes, and they're really like big help, like really big into like stabbing at the ball, like on drives and all that. So, now Jokic is gonna have to play make, and he's gonna find the open guy. Now it's just up to the open guy to hit shots. So Christian Braun's gonna have a really big series for them to win, because you already know that OKC is gonna force them into Christian Braun open threes, or Peyton Watson, or guys that don't normally hit threes at a really high clip. That's what OKC does. They force guys that they want to shoot the ball. And if they beat them like that, then they beat them like that.
Steve, you think?
I think as Trey said it, I'm trying to think how many things can Denver try? And I wonder if they tap back into, okay, we can do some of the switches. Jokic, you just guard the block, and whoever's in that area, that's just going to be who you have. And so does he just get the Caruso minutes? Does he get if Jalen Williams plays the center, does he get those minutes? Does he just kind of roam and Denver tries to tap the switch button then to try and keep OKC in a box? I think the biggest thing is like who's going to spring things for Denver. How much of an impact is Russell Westbrook going to have? How can Denver get OKC into like a quick shot mode? I think it's going to be interesting, but like if they're in a drop and Jamal Murray isn't making shots and they're just funneling, as Trey said, 2 non-shooters to a degree, it can get really tricky. So then Denver's got to sustain that offense at a high level. I think the last time they played, Jokic came out on fire in the first quarter, and OKC was like, that doesn't matter. We're just going to keep playing.
Final thoughts before we wrap. We did this before round one. I want one guy for you guys in all of the series, just like a sort of an unexpected hero. Somebody you think is going to be we're going to be talking about this time next week, who maybe is not, top of mind right now in sort of a series preview.
Which series we think? Any of them?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I just said, Christian Braun.
Is that your guy? If
he has a really big series, and I think Denver's gonna win the series.
I'm gonna go with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I feel like this is a series for him with kind of the lineups that Golden State throws out there. I think his defense is going to be important. I think he'll have the opportunity to probably feel better offensively in this one. And if he's better, I think that just helps the Wolves a bunch. So that's going to be my one. I already used my comment.
That's a good one.
Nekias. See, I kind of want to annoy Steve and go Aaron Wiggins, but I'm not going to do that. I would say...
Why does that annoy Steve?
Because he said, he's the savior of basketball. You see in Thunder Circle.
Please,
but I'm just. But no, in all seriousness, I'll stick with Boston, New York. I'll say Deuce McBride. I think there's some interesting closing lineup decisions that the Knicks can go with, and I think his shot making may be important in this series.
I love that one also because it's for them to have a shot. I mean, they didn't get anything from the bench in Detroit, and they're gonna need Deuce for them to be in this series. That's great. Thank you guys, as always. We got a lot of good action tonight. A lot of good stuff tomorrow. We will be back soon. As always, listen to Dunker Spot later this week. We'll see Trey later this week as well. Until then, see you guys later.